All right, let's get right into it. That is what we're going to be diving in today. And specifically, this is a recreation of a song that I made, which is a song by Circadian. It's not like super accurate, but it's just something I wanted to do for fun. And Circadian is just a fucking slapper. But what I wanted to talk to about you today is this sound, because this sound, this one in particular, the one at the beginning, or any sort of version of that, is overkilled right now in drum and bass. We can hear this in lots and lots and lots of different tunes. For example, like this one. Make it pump. And this one. And this one. And the list goes on and on. It seems to be the drum and bass scene's favorite sound, but it is pretty complicated to make, and I don't think there's a lot of really super good tutorials on it. So we're gonna do a bunch of them on this YouTube channel, but we're gonna take this one as a start. Now, this is like an example of something that I remade from a song, but we're gonna look at it in a broader sense, and I'm just gonna show you the components of how to get this sound, because there's a couple of things in there that, you know, some layering and some effects that you may not really think about. So now, once again, if you are interested in just downloading the presets that I made, then you can do that for free in the link below. Or if you want the entire project file, make sure to check that out inside the School of Drum and Bass. Let's start creating something like this from scratch. So I'm just going to take these notes that I was using before, but the note themselves don't really matter, except for the fact that I found that the lower notes, they just tend to work a little bit better. If you put them in the higher notes, it's going to sound more sort of like, you know, kind of not really heavy, and you want that heavy sort of laserish sound. And actually, we're going to be using all three of the oscillators and then some interesting effects to work on that. So let's start with a Serum 2. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to grab the Fret Likes Bass wavetable, which is in the original Serum 1 wavetables. And the reason I want this is because it has a very specific sound that is very useful for what we want. We're kind of aiming to get a lot of bass, but at the same time, a lot of sort of like mid-high, squelchy, bubbly, like almost liquid kind of, you know, kind of like I was describing in this tutorial that I did earlier, which, if you haven't watched it, is super good fun. But anyway, I digress. Since this is sort of like a wumpy kind of sound, we're gonna draw a wumpy kind of LFO. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna make it something like this. And I'm gonna put this on the wavetable position of this right here. And since this is gonna be, you know, in this case a bit longer, we'll dive into the shorter ones later, like the one in Power by Kanine, for example. But, well, as you can hear, that basically does nothing. But let's do something like this. And then turn that down by 3 octaves so that it becomes low. Now, there you get it. It's literally, I mean, I think it's called Fret Likes Bass because Fret must be a fucking frog. But anyway, let's start using that first now. And now if we put this bend plus minus on there, and we also modulate that with this LFO, wow, we're already getting that squelchiness that we're really looking for, right? So regardless of what we're going to be doing, this is already something really cool to start with, and, you know, do your own sound design. Anyway, we're gonna do something like this, but you don't want it to go too far. You want to keep that disgusting bubbly shit in there. All right, I'm going to turn that off for a second so you can see what we're going to do with the second wavetable. For the second wavetable, what I want is you can either go and grab this Icon Has Kick wavetable and use it somewhere in this region. So you basically just want a bunch of squelched together sine waves. I actually quite often find that rather than that one, the harmonic series works better, or the FFT squeal, which is actually probably my favorite, which is here in digital as well, called FFT squeal. And this is actually what a lot of Jumpup sounds are made out of as well, because using bend on this and wavetable positions on this makes some really disgusting, wet sounding shit. I don't know how else to say it. So obviously that's too high, but let's turn that down. Still sounds like shit, but now let's do something interesting. Let's put it all the way up there. And then let's get the bend minus as well, or the bend plus minus rather. And let's put that on here as well. Oh my fucking god, that's where we go. Woo! Oh my god, yes. Okay, so that is starting to sound pretty nice to me. Let's also actually, because we're going to be using all three oscillators, let's put this LFO on the level of the oscillator as well, so that it's going to act pretty much like an envelope. We're going to be using this third one as well in a second, so let's do that. And actually what we can do is to further fuck this up, we can do the thing that is almost the same as bend plus minus, but slightly differently, which is the asim. And now you can hear we're starting to get some of that grit in there, right? So if we turn this up a bit, we can determine like how much of a cricket kind of sound we want, but towards the ends, that sounds pretty good to me. Anyway, we're gonna dial that in as much as we need it later. Now, what we need some actual bass, because we've got this, right, which is gonna be really like watery. We've got this, which is going to be like really bubbly and bassy, but this is not such a strong wavetable. So now we're going to grab one of the monster wavetables. And what I've said in other tutorials before is the monster one is just a beautiful one, because if you put it somewhere here, it's basically almost like a sine wave. So if you want to use it as a bass, as sort of an underlying thing on top of some other weird wavetables, that has a really nice strength to it. Also here, we can add this bend warp mode. And to be honest, this is, if you're looking for like really dubsteppy or jump-uppy sounds, this is quite often what you'll end up going to. Oh yeah. Oh, let's go. Now that's kind of what we're looking for here. Probably something like that, but let's have a look. Okay, let's add all of these together, see what we got. Sounds fucking terrible. Let's also add a sub to it, also at -3. And let's put this on direct out as well, so that it doesn't go through the processing that we're about to do. Now it's got some body. Nice. All right, next up, what we're going to do is we're going to grab a second LFO, and we're going to let this affect the coarse pitch. Now, when you're dealing with big sounds like this, it is often very productive to see if you can add some extra sort of transient power by getting the coarse pitch of the main tuning on here. And it's just going to give it like that, you know, kind of like an 808 kind of feeling. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to click here. I'm going to type 12 ST, and that's going to put it at 9% or 12 semitones. So when it's here, it will be 12 semitones. And I think what we have to do is we have to put all of these on envelope mode as well. So you can hear that's a difference, right? Versus this. And especially when we start applying the effects, that's when the real magic starts happening. So first of all, let's add some hyper and chorus, and maybe also like a tiny little bit of dimension right here. Turn that size down though. And then we're going to start doing the magic. We're going to grab a filter here, and we're going to go grab that magical diffuser. I'm going to try and put this somewhere here, put that stages up by a whole bunch. And what this is going to do is it's sometimes I find it barely noticeable, but if you get the right sweet spot, it will really add that extra sort of bubbliness and that sort of slappy kind of liquid feel to it, which will, once again, once we have some more effects, really come out. So we could even actually try and put like a tiny little bit of movement on there. You know, something like that. All right, and then I'm going to add another filter. This is something I've been playing around with a little bit lately. There's a new Serum 2 filter called the WSP, and I do believe it works a little bit differently than normal filters. I don't believe that what you see here is exactly what you get. I think it fucks with the phase a little bit as well. But if I bring up this morph here, what I'm going to get is essentially, if I also up this drive here, I'm going to get a boost in the low end, and I'm going to get a sort of like a little notch here, and then, well, it's going to do, I don't think that it's doing exactly what we're seeing here, but I could be wrong. And now we're losing a little bit of that higher tonality that's a bit annoying on the top. And it's just going to make it sound a little bit nicer. But so, okay, we've been sort of gathering components now, and we have a whole frequency spectrum of things. We've got a bit of bass, we've got a bit of like sort of grit in that mid-lower area, we've got all the stuff that's happening in the highs, right? Now what we need to do is we need to go back into this filter, and what we're going to do is we're going to grab a band filter here. This is a technique very commonly used in making growls, where you also have really harmonically rich wavetables that have a lot of higher frequency stuff that you don't particularly need. And so we're going to put this LFO as well on this cutoff right here of this filter. And now you can start hearing, if we let this apply to B and C, and we get the right part, or maybe actually not on C, now we're starting to get somewhere where we want to be. Reel this in a bit by doing something like this. If we put that A-sim back up here, and adjust that a little bit, we get something quite nice. All right, now let's go and do some OTTing, because let's face it, every time you have a huge, disgusting bass, what do? Well, we put a compressor on there. So let's grab an OTT right here. Turn that gain up. Now it's gonna start really fucking fat and angry, right? So let's go. Let's maybe take away a little bit of those highs here, and let's increase those mids. so that we get a bit of that grit back. Maybe we can put this on 9. Get that anger back here, right? And let's just repeat that little trick and get another compressor on here, and let's just grab another OTT and sort of like kind of see how much of all the frequencies that we have that we want to come out more. So I'm gonna grab another OTT. Let's go here. Turn that gain up again. And you can see we're really starting to hone in on that sound that we want. Maybe we can take that threshold down a little bit to make it a little bit louder. Maybe you just, mess around with these bands a little bit. Hey, sorry to interrupt, but if you're watching this video, then my guess is that you're trying to become better at producing professional sounding drum and bass. And if you are taking that seriously, then you may want to hear about the School of Drum and Bass. The School of Drum and Bass is my passion project, and it's a membership that contains over 300 videos about music production in general, but also specifically about how to produce drum and bass. And there's just so much content in there. It doesn't matter whether you are a total beginner or if you've been producing for several years, because we go over everything. We cover very basic things like how to use Ableton, and all the way to, what drum and bass actually is and how layering works and what the common drum patterns are and all those fundamentals. We have hours and hours of in-depth Serum tutorials aimed at making you a master of the synth and finally being able to translate the sounds that you hear in your head to something that sounds awesome in your synthesizer so that you can create any drum and bass sound that you want. Plus also the theory behind how that works. We also include professional mixing and mastering classes, for example, like sessions where we take an unmastered and an unmixed song and walk you through step by step how to make that sound professional, how to get that industry grade loudness and clarity. And one of the best things is we also have an entire section of complete drop breakdowns where we walk you through a recreation of a full drop of a popular song, and there's many of them in there where we go step by step, all the layers, making everything from scratch, how to recreate songs that you love. Also, very soon we're even going to be adding complete start to finish song courses where we literally walk you from the very beginning to the very end into making a complete song step by step, taking you through how to make everything, make the drums, make all the layers, everything from scratch, and teaching you so many things you would have never found on YouTube. Actually add new videos every single week. Things like in-depth tutorials on super creative sound design, arrangement exercises, breaking down like the secrets of hot artists right now and what we can learn from them and what we can take away. Honestly, the School of Drum and Bass right now is probably the biggest, but definitely the most comprehensive drum and bass production learning resource out there on the internet today. And the best part is that right now we have a super special deal. The first 7 days you can join for just £1 British pound. So if that sounds like you and you may want to check that out, then go to the link in the description down here, or simply go to howtodrumandbass.com and make today the first day of your journey towards becoming a professional drum and bass producer. All right, now without further ado, let's move on with the rest of this video. And we could even try, this is not entirely necessary, but to find something cool like a comb filter. Comb filters always work pretty well on things that are kind of growly, which is essentially, I guess this is sort of like a growl. So let's do something like that. That sounds pretty sick to me. I also really always like that low end filter, the comb gives. It just gives that boost. Nice. So we can blend that to taste, basically. We can also decrease the mix of that a lot. And also, in this LFO, we can also determine the shape, right? Which is where you'll hear a lot of the stuff that we've been doing come back or not. So maybe, we could even make this go earlier so it has a faster attack. We could do something like this. I think that's probably the perfect shape. So let's see if we can get any benefit from accentuating a band of frequencies over time. We just want to create a lot of movement in the sound, right? So we're going to put this on the Q right here. We're going to create a nice little bell curve here. Maybe do something like that. Maybe not all the way to the highs, but something along the lines of that. Now, what we can also do is we can start adding a cool convolver to give it a little bit of an extra slap. So something that happens a lot on sounds like this. They will choose like a weird kind of, impulse response to add onto this. Now, I gotta tell you, I have one that worked very well for this, which I got from Odd Prophet, and if I can find this video, then I will post it here. But definitely go check out Odd Prophet. His sound design is super on point. He mostly does dubstep stuff, but he does talk about some very interesting things. Anyway, he made this phaser convolver pack, which I think I had to pay like £3 or £4 for, with some really weird impulse responses. And so that's actually, I'm going to use one of those. I'm going to use the first one from there. And I'll just make you, really quickly, I'll put this mix all the way up, and I'll just make you listen to what it sounds like by itself. If I turn this gain up, it's just gonna give it a lot of extra sort of squelchiness, because you can see here that this sound by itself is actually just a bunch of bubbles or something like that. Anyway, we can dial the mix back of that a lot. We can dial the gain back of that a lot as well again. And then kind of like play with the size and the tone. I would recommend you go find just really weird impulse responses. You can download them everywhere. There's tutorials on them everywhere. Maybe I'll do one in the future as well. Really, in case of these sounds, can really add something to the sound, which is really nice. All right, then let's just do some other hygiene factors. Let's add a little bit of a delay in there. I always like to just use a slapback delay on things that are supposed to be big. So let's grab a preset here and get this slap delay unlinked. And it just kind of like, you know, it kind of just like puts a little bit of that sound behind it, which is always a good idea, a little bit like an echo. And then finally, let's feed all of this into what is essentially a limiter. So let's put this in the compressor and let's go ahead and choose the limiter option here. The safety limiter will do. And then we can make it a little bit louder to still distort it if we want it. Okay, so as you can hear, this is sounding really close to all those kinds of sounds that you want. There's a couple of parameters that we can play with later, but first let's see what else we can do in post-processing. So first of all, I of course want a little bit of reverb, right? I want it to have that sort of juiciness. That'll do just nicely. And then what I want to do is I want to probably clip this sound a little bit for mixing purposes later. And then of course to sort of really temper it in, because that reverb adds a little bit of extra volume in there. The clipping here makes it to 0. The round brings it back up by a couple of decibels. We put a limiter there to change that. Now you can hear one small problem on the background that I haven't fixed yet. So if you know about this, please let me know in the comments below, because I'm not really sure what's happening. But this WSP filter, the reason I said it works a little bit differently than what I can see on the screen here is because it gives me some stupid resonances that remain. If I put an EQ on here now, did you see that? Just a bunch of random shit happening. So I'm just really quickly going to place a utility on here. And what I would basically do is I would grab the gain and just automate so that the gain, you know, after a while, after the reverb tail has kind of ended, it just goes away. Right, so that it just fucks off. And the rest of that will disappear into the mix, right? Also, if you want to keep track of your automations, you can just press this little plus here. Someone was asking about that the other day in one of the videos. Nice. Okay, so now we've got something that is quite heavy. We can go back in here and change whatever we want about this. So I'm just going to go ahead and not play the notes, but just, you know, play some notes by myself. So that can be really cool, but you probably want to play it an octave lower, right? Anyway, you can fuck around with that, but then you can fuck around with, you know, all the other stuff. So what you can do is you can go and change the wavetables. For example, you know, you can change this fret likes wave, which is kind of that bubbly underlying layer. You can do something like this, or you can change the bend on that. And they're all subtle changes, but, you know, they do matter. You could take out an entire wavetable. I mean, even that sounds pretty sick. You could also actually just opt to use this FFT squeal, but then with like one of the other wavetables that is kind of more like that monster wavetable, something that has rich, dark harmonics. And we can turn this down. Sounds good. You can change this band here as well. I mean, that sounds aggressive. We could go ahead and change some wavetable stuff here. And you can see that we're getting all kinds of different timbres here now as well. I could also, for example, go and get a phase plant wavetable from here and get this screams or one of the growls here. Also sounds very cool, right? Maybe we... Sounds pretty damn cool. I mean, even just that FFT squeal by itself sounds really, really awesome with all this processing on there now. just gotta find the right, you know, wavetable. And that's also, you gotta never give up on the buttons. You really gotta find what works. Wow, yeah, and this is a lot like that Kanine song Power, right? I think. And you just gotta determine like what you want, right? You have a couple of layers, a couple of oscillators to play with. And you can also modulate more things, like every wavetable position. I really like this squished wavetable as well, which is also one of the faceplant ones. If you put it somewhere here, it's absolutely beautiful. And then, of course, you know, a last thing that you could go and do is you could go and you could determine some more accentuation in those frequencies. I usually like it when it's sweeping a little bit more. And then, of course, in post-production, I mean, you can do so many different things, but this is essentially the basis of that sound. And you can make it very, very long, right? We've got this one LFO right here that is now 1 second, but it can also be shorter, of course. There are loads of different possibilities for you to put it in a song, which is what I did, which let's listen to that one more time now. Now, once again, if you are interested in just downloading the presets that I made, then you can do that for free in the link below. Or if you want the entire project file, make sure to check that out inside the School of Drum and Bass, which is on sale now for just £1 British. Anyway, that was the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in the next one.